Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, thanks for dropping in, and hey, please feel free to watch some of the videos if you're, maybe it might strike some interest to you. It's a lot of it's kind of random stuff, but it's a lot of knife cleaning and stuff like that. Some people think it's therapeutic. It's therapeutic to me actually doing it, and it's restoring knives that some people probably would throw into a junk drawer or something, and reviving that knife to where you can use it again. But today we're going to talk about a few different things so I've got 7 steps as to why deer meat can, in some cases, will taste like crap. Usually that gamey taste, as some people say, or it's just got a bad off flavor. There's reasons behind it, I promise you. I know there's people out there that may or may not deer hunt, or they maybe don't hunt anymore, but they wouldn't mind somebody giving them a few packages of deer meat, right? Because it typically tastes good. It's healthy. It's off the land. There's no crazy, I would say, pharmaceutical chemicals that are inside the animals, like you may or may not get in processed beef and lamb, chicken, pork, that kind of stuff. But I've got 7 reasons from my personal point of view and experience why venison may have that gamey. When I mean gamey, there's a natural taste, but there is a gamey off flavor that some venison meat may have. And there's 7 reasons why that is the case. So the first one is proper field care. This is probably to it. There's this reason, I would almost say one of the number one out of the 7 reasons why venison has that off taste. So depending on what the temperature is, if it's winter time, the temperatures are below 40 degrees, like even during the day, you're pretty good. You really don't have to field dress that deer. Like if you're going to get it from point A to point B, and it's not going to take a very long time, you should be good. But just good practice is just get that deer field dress, because the internal organs inside that deer, and it's encapsulated, it's hard for heat to escape. It will cause the meat to tend to start to spoil, because soon as that deer takes its last breath, and that's with any animal, the body starts to decay. It really is. It starts the process. When the blood stops flowing, it starts to decay. So you want to get that heat out the guts, especially depending on where the animal was shot placement. If it's double lunged, you're okay. But if it's like a gut shot animal, you got to get that. You need to get that animal processed properly and field dress. So let's say, especially in the warmer months, that's like a no-brainer. Like, get that animal field dressed as soon as possible. I mean, every minute counts. Honestly, it really does. Some people may say it don't, but I promise you it does. There's too many studies on it, and it's just proof. There's too much proof out there. So, but taking care of that animal field dressing, you want to do it the proper way. There's ways of doing it about less messy. There's probably some videos out there on proper ways to field dress a whitetail or any other animal out there that people prefer to hunt and consume on the table. There's videos out there, so I'm not going to get into that. That's what this video is about. But like I said, there's ways of cleaning without making a mess and properly field dressing that animal. Yes, you're out in the field, you don't have water, you really want to rinse it out real good, but that's what you do. You field dress it and then get it to wherever you can get water access to rinse the cavity out of that animal to let it cool off. The reason behind it is to cool that meat as fast as possible. Second one is, once you field dress it, is not taking care of the meat after you've done field dressing. You've got it to your wherever you're taking it to, is getting that meat taken care of. You want to get the hair off. That's why I say use a water hose. Even if you got, say, an hour drive to the meat processor, because there's not just meat processors everywhere, you might have to drive a little bit. Get it somewhere, either to the hunting camp or to your house. If you live closer to where you hunt, get the water hose, just cool water, and get the animal rinsed off as clean as possible and quick as possible. And then if you can do it, stick the bag, like just get a bag of ice or something, throw it into the cavity. Like I said, this is if you got a pretty good long drive and the temperatures are below or above, say 50 degrees outside. If the ambient temperature is above 50 degrees outside, if it's in the 40s or 30s, like on a cold late December morning or day or evening, you're probably okay. But good practice, just try to get the meat and the deer cavity and the deer itself just clean. You want to keep the animal clean. Now this may be a little controversial, but I've had some bad experiences with meat processing places, especially deer. There's some meat processing places, especially up here in Missouri, that they'll handle deer meat during a certain part of the year, but they really specialize in beef or cattle and livestock. I know a couple that do that, and they shut off. They'll take during bow season, and then they will not take deer meat, because at that same time people were bringing in animals to slaughter. So they specialize in that, but they do a really good job. I'm not going to say their name, but I've taken venison before, or deer meat to them before, and they've done a really good job. But this is where there's some places they take the masses. And what I mean by that is they take all the deer meat and it just gets all processed together. The problem I have with that, and I'm sure there's other ones out there that have problems with it, is you don't know where that other deer came from. You don't know how that deer was taken care of, right? And you want to think like, hey, I took all this time and effort to take care of my deer that I had taken, and then you just give it to the meat process, and then they're just throwing it into the masses, right? Some places like that, I think a lot of them are kind of getting away from that because of the bad rap and the common sense factor of not doing that. Bad business practices and whatnot, but like some of them will take and put a tag on it, and they will pull that deer, and they got these big walk-in coolers. They'll pull that deer and only process that deer, and then they get the other one. Most cases, and the ones I've talked to and the ones I've taken my deer to, it does take a little longer, but that's okay. Like, don't rush. I'd rather take the time and have them produce a quality product and get my money's worth out of it, versus, well, can I, cutting off, say, 72 to 84 hours earlier, right? Some things like they just don't rush, especially if that's their business practices and that's what they do. That's good. But that's about on that. Like I said, just pick your meat processing places wisely, as I'm gonna say, if you really care about your meat quality and what is the end product, what's the quality of the end product, right? Processing tools. So with that one, you can't see it up here, but I have a lot of I invested in processing tools. Now, I don't have some of the best, right? Because I don't do it for a living. So if I did something for a living, yes, you want to definitely invest in the quality of your equipment. But at the same time, even if it is something you just do your 2 or 3 deer a year and then you process your own venison, you don't want to get junk, but sometimes at the same time you don't want to break your bank, right? Getting equipment. So I don't have it right here, but y'all can look it up. Lim. They make pretty good products. You can get that at of course you can order on Amazon. You can go to their website, go to butcher companies, you can go to Academy, wherever. I like a lot of their equipment. Academy's they sell that brand, and I think they sell maybe another brand, but they have what I call their own brands called Game Winner. As far as I know, they still sell it. I've got one of their meat grinders. It does okay. There are stronger. I think this one's at, I don't even know if it's even half a horsepower, but it's got 575 watts electric motor. There's some that's got like half horsepower motors, and the bigger the motor, you're gonna pay more. That's the stronger the output. It won't choke up as bad and bind up, so you got more power pushing through the meat. But also pay attention to just read the directions. It'll tell you how to do it properly. And also when you're grinding your meat, if you're using a meat grinder, you want to get as much of that sinew and fat and all the other stuff of the deer fat off. That's what really binds up those meat tenderizers and meat grinders. So invest in equipment. It is some effort. It's something you have to plan out. Trust me, I've done many deer by myself. If you got family members or friends that can help you, kind of get in on it, it does speed up the process, and you get to visit and whatever. But if you're doing it yourself and your kids don't want to touch it, or wife don't want to help you, or your significant other, just plan ahead and take your time doing it. If you don't know how to do it, there's plenty of videos. But like I said, don't just take one individual or group that's showing you how to process a deer. Look at several different videos and then kind of get the average of the information from those other different videos, and then make your own. Get your own game plan, right? You do it the way your heart tells you to do it, and then you'll just learn as you go, right? It's a learning process. I always learn something new. Like I'll watch other videos and I'm like, oh man, that is a good idea. Well, that's a better way to do that, right? Here's a big one: is storage of your meat. So let's say, most meat processors, they're going to either vacuum seal it or butcher paper, whatever, which are both great. We'll get into that in a minute. But if you're doing it yourself, storing your meat in the freezer. All right, so with that is pressure vacuum sealing. Like I got several different vacuum sealers. I use it for other stuff. Like if I buy meat in bulk from the grocery store, I like to do that. I'll separate it and stuff like that. It keeps it longer than just taking it from, like say a big thing of chicken, you just put it in the freezer. I mean, if you're gonna use it within that week, that's fine. But if I'm telling you, after about 2 weeks, you're gonna get freezer burn on it. That's why you want to store your store-bought meat properly and your venison. Vacuum sealing's good. Another thing is taking, not really drying the meat out, but like say you got your tenderizing some back straps right on the deer. To give you an example, I'm just giving you an example. Take some saran wrap. Don't use the knockoff stuff. I mean, if you have to, but get saran wrap, the brand, Reynolds, I think, or whoever makes it. And you put a couple steaks that are tenderized or whatever, or not, or butterflied, however you want to do it. And then you're wrapping it and you're trying to squeeze as much air out, but don't make it too thick. And then you take some good butcher paper, that white butcher paper with some butcher, whatever kind of tape you want to use, or just buy butcher tape, and packaging, taking your time, doing it right, and then labeling it right. It would last the same, or if not longer, if it's got good paper and you've done it right with the saran wrap. It'll last just as long as vacuum sealing, and if it's stored properly in the freezer. But the thing is, you're getting in a hurry and you're digging in the freezer right. This is where that paper, that thick butcher paper, and using the saran wrap, I feel like overachieves. When I say overachieves, but it conquers over the vacuum seal, is because, especially if you're trying to go cheap and you're using the thin vacuum seal packages, the thin ones actually seal better, but they're not as forgiving as getting nicked or bumped inside the freezer. And if you nick it, I mean, that's done deal. You won't even know you done it. It'll be moved around inside the freezer, right? And then you'll come back wanting to, hey, I'm gonna do some cream cheese bacon wrap back straps, and you go pull your package out, and it's it's half of it's freezer burn. And you're like, what the heck happened? And you're looking at it and there'll be a little nick and done got air inside of it. So if you're going to vacuum seal, don't go the cheap way. Get you some good thickness. And there's more. You can do your own research on that. I think there's like 5 mil. I forgot if it's 5 millimeter or 3 millimeter. I don't know. I'd have to get something to show you. But pick your, they're not the cheapest, but I mean, you get what you pay for these days, to be honest with you. I ain't going to sugarcoat it. It is what it is. 99% you're going to pay what you get for it. You're going to pay for what you're going to get. So, but yeah, so that you run into that problem. That's the only problem with vacuum sealing. And you got to make sure you ask these questions if you go to processor, because some places don't do the butcher paper. They may only vacuum seal. And then they do the ground they twist it up in the little 1 pound bags, which are fine too. As long as they got all the air out, those will last quite a while in the freezer. Especially if the plastic is kind of thick, the bags are thick, you're good to go. For super thin, those can get nicked. And same thing, you're gonna run in a freezer burn. Cutting your meat. We're still staying on the processing. Go back to processing tools. I was talking about storage meat and freezer setup. Processing tools. I missed some stuff. It's going for knives, right? Okay, you're cleaning. So I got this knife for Mr. JJ. It's he got it from a knife maker. This is Mr. JJ from Mountain View, Arkansas. This is a guy named Lewis Lloyd. He's probably got a website. You can Google him. I'm not sure what kind of steel this is. It could be S30V. I don't know. To me, if I treat it like it's a high carbon steel, I'll keep a coat of oil or wax on it, food grade, and but it stays sharp. I've cleaned 2 deer with this knife without sharpening. I did not sharpen. Now I didn't gut with it. I had a separate knife for gutting. Because what I was doing, I didn't have time to really clean it off. Because you don't want to use the same knife that you gut unless you can clean it off good. You don't want to have gut on that, and then you're processing, quartering your deer out, right? That's a no-go. But I cleaned 2 deer with this knife, and each deer I cleaned with this knife without sharpening. So good quality knife, goes a long ways. And if you have to sharpen a little bit, it's better. You don't want to clean and take care of a deer with a dull knife. So if you got to stop, clean your blade off, whatever knife you got, and hone it back up a little bit, which shouldn't take long. If you got a proper edge, a couple swipes on a honing rod or however you sharpen it, you want to take care of your animal with a clean, sharp knife. You don't need bone saws and stuff like that. I do have them, bone saws. Certain circumstances, I kind of will use it, but if you're quartering out an animal, that's where you gotta know the anatomy. You learn about the anatomy, and once you figure it out, man, you can take this one knife. I've done it. I have witnesses. I've done it many times. You can take this one knife and skin and quarter out, break a deer down with one knife. Now, like I said, depends on, you may have to sharpen it, depending on what kind of knife you got, but you can take one tool and do that. You don't have to have like dang bone saws and reciprocating saws and all this whole craziness. If that's your thing, that's cool. But you want to make sure they're clean, especially after use and before use. Definitely clean your equipment. You do not want to contaminate the meat, because if you put contaminated meat in the freezer, it's still gonna go bad. All right, we're gonna switch gears real quick. So I'm gonna go into the cooking. Let's say we did everything right. We did everything right processing the deer, or took it to a great processing company. Well, they have real good business ethics and they do a great job, right? One of the number one things I hear people in conversations, let's say people, they're not big hunters, but they do like deer meat. There's people that don't really want to put the effort into hunting, or they don't want to kill something, but they'll eat the heck out of some dang deer meat. I've had some family members like that. They'll eat the crap out of some animals. They don't want you killing nothing. It's like, okay, that big steak you're eating, I promise you, majority of the hunters probably did it. They took that animal more ethical than what that steer going through the chute, what it gets. And there's videos on YouTube, I'm sure it's got stuff like that. But anyway, people will overcook venison. Venison is super lean. That's one of the healthy things about it, is how lean the venison meat is. Different cuts do make a difference. Usually everybody's go-to is back straps, but there are some cuts of meat in the hams that are just as good and maybe not better than the dang back straps people overlook, and it ends up going into the ground pile, which is kind of sad. Ain't no kind. Well, it is sad. Ain't no kind to it. That's where you got to learn about the anatomy. And there's plenty of books. Hell, I probably got one in here somewhere where it shows the breakdown of different animals, venison. It shows a breakdown of like cows, pigs, all kinds of stuff. There's plenty of data out there on that. It's about learning the anatomy. But people overcook. You don't want to. It depends on how you're cooking it. There's that saying low and slow, which is fine, especially like crock pot stuff, but it depends on what you're making. If you're doing back straps, the way I like to do it is make sure you got high heat. You do high heat, quick cooking. And it puts that good sear, like you hear about cooking a steak, right? Good ribeye, having that good sear, right? It's all about the sear. It traps that good flavor in there, but you don't want to overcook it. I'd say, like, if you got a piece of backstrap like this, and I'll probably have to make a video on this at some point, but yeah, you got a piece of backstrap, right? A little steak, right? It's all about the sear. So if you just grill it, let's say by itself, you ain't got it on a skewer, nothing like that. I would do, if it's fire's hot, like you got that grill 400 plus degrees, right? It's cooking. I do 3 minutes. Like I said, it's got to be hot now. 3 minutes. Flip it, 3 minutes. And it should, if it's done right, that sear, when you pull that meat off, it shouldn't really stick too much to your grill. That means it's got a good sear. It'll pick it up, put it just like you was cooking on straight coals. 3 minutes, 3 minutes. And it should, if it steak's about that, say 1.5 inches to 1 inch thick, it should, non-tenderized backstrap steak, it should be pink in the middle, but not really bloody or anything, because I don't even like the real bloody meat, but I like it pink in the middle, because if you can overcook it, it won't necessarily be a bad flavor, but it'll be super chewy, and that's kind of a turn off to a lot of people. Like I said, flavor may be good, but it's the texture, right? Some people will get a turn off on texture. So yeah, overcooking meat just depends on what it is. Another thing, like with ground, right? If you go to a meat processor, I like to do because you're trying to eat it healthy, and you don't want to put too much fat from like a pig or lamb or beef, right? Because that's what it's going to taste like. You want to taste the venison. You want to taste the nature of it, right? I do like 10% beef fat or pork fat or bacon. If you want a little bit of bacon, if I'm doing for ground, I'll do let's just say I will do a 50, 25, 25. So when I take a deer, I'll go 50% steaks, 25 ground with 10% bacon or whatever they got. Not all meat processors have the same stuff, and then just straight ground, the other 25%. I use that for like chilies, taco meat, stuff like that, because you're not trying to bound it. You just want straight ground, right? But if I'm doing like hamburgers or something in that realm, I want a little bit of that fat. One, it gives it flavor because you're grilling it, and two, it kind of keeps it bound up. Some people do 20%. It's just whatever floats your boat. The last thing I would say is over seasoning the meat. A lot of people are picky with their steaks, right? Some people only want salt and pepper. If a good quality meat, like on a beef steak, like a ribeye, a lot of people want salt and pepper. That's it. They want to taste the flavor of the meat, and they don't overpower it, but it gives that just right flavor, right? Well, venison can be the same way. Don't over season the meat. You can overdo it, I promise you. Especially if you're grilling, you can over season the meat. This is my personal opinion, and I've listened to other people, and I took their opinions as well, and that's how I formulated my opinion or my analysis of it. There's people that like to do, the old trick. There's one old, I wouldn't say recipe, but a process of taking some meat in a Ziploc bag and putting all your seasoning there and doing it overnight. Well, that lean meat is going to soak up that all that seasoning. And then when you go to cook it, that's all you're going to taste. And it could make it have an off taste too, doing that. I don't know. It does some little chemical reaction. I don't know. It does something, but you want to do it for maybe 2 or 3 hours and then take it out. And I even will take it the extra step, depending on what the recipe is. I'll take it out, either cook it right there on the grill, kind of drain off, or I'll wipe the meat off with a paper towel and then put it on the grill or whatever how I'm cooking it. And I may go back and add a little bit of salt and pepper or something like that, or garlic powder. I don't know. It just depends on what the recipe is. I may do something like that. But the key is like if you're using Italian dressing, right? It's okay to use Italian dressing. People have been doing it for a long time. You just don't want to leave the meat in it like overnight. It's going to taste like Italian dressing. I promise you, I've done it. I made that mistake before. And I've seen the faces of people I cooked it for, and they're kind of like, I don't know. It wasn't what I call a good reaction. So it's okay to season your meat. You just don't want to like store it overnight like that. There is another trick with that when, as far as seasoning the meat, you can do even buttermilk. You can do buttermilk. If it will pull some of the blood and the gaminess out of a wild meat, no matter what kind of wild meat you got, you can soak it in buttermilk. Or you can take 50% whole milk and 50% vinegar. Kind of makes like a buttermilk. You can do fish that way. I do fish like that. If it pulls the fishy taste out of catfish, any of that kind of fish, it does great. Some fish you don't have to, but catfish depends on what body of water you catch it in. It'll have a fishy taste, especially if you don't trim it. I soak it in buttermilk for about an hour or two before I fry it. That leads me back to not taking care of the meat properly. So I'm jumping back and forth, but there's a reason behind the madness. Going back to the second point that I said in this video, you want to make sure you trim the meat properly. One of the things I've seen you can do, it's like sinew and it's like this layer goes over the skin. They call it the silver skin or whatever. Sometimes it's a good thing to leave it on there. It's good. You want to get all the fat off because the leaf fat, they call it leaf fat. That fat on venison is not very good. You want to, sometimes you can leave that shell on the meat, the silver skin on, if you store it in a freezer. It actually will help keep it from, it ain't gonna really give it any bad flavors. The fat is what gives it bad flavor. But leaving that skin on will help keep it from getting freezer burn. I've noticed that before. I've done that before. It's just you have to remember to bring that meat, when you bring it out and defrost it down slowly, is to trim it before you go to fry it or however you want to cook it. Fry it, tenderize it, run it through a tenderizer. You want to get that skin off first. That's why some people do it before. Like if they're going to process it in a meat tenderizer, you want to get that skin off. So if you're going to do tenderized steaks, common sense goes into play. You want to trim that off before you do that and then freeze it. But if you're just doing like butterfly steaks, I like to leave the skin on. It only takes just a second to trim that off, but it helps store that meat properly. Like I said, these are my opinions. Other people may have different views. That is okay. That's why I always say different strokes for different folks, right? So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded. I just wanted to get that out because it is deer season and I'm deer hunting. I'm in the process of deer hunting, so hopefully I can get a big buck. Hopefully this weather permits. I plan on getting a big buck. As you like to as you know, I like to kill big bucks, right? I also like killing does, because to me personally, the does taste better than these big old bucks. Now with that, we'll go back to storage of meat, right? Well, the big bucks, there could be just as good. You just have to handle the meat a little bit differently. And that is like dry aging and stuff like that. Like a good old young doe or maiden doe, man, that you can literally cut that deer up and cook it right there, and it is fine. The old bucks, they might be a little, what they call a little nutty, because their bodies are full of testosterone, right? Might want to dry age it if you have that ability. If you don't, you can dry age it outside if it's, like I said, if it don't get above 40 degrees, wherever you're living at. But if it's above that, I wouldn't recommend it very long. You can do what I call the old ice chest method. I'm sure a lot of people out there have done that. The only thing with that is you can't just put the meat in there and then throw a bunch of ice on it and forget about it 3 or 4 days later, because you're going to open it up and it's not going to be good for you. You want to drain it off. There's 2 ways to do it. I like to put a layer of ice, put meat, ice, meat, ice, if possible. You can prop it up in about a 45-degree angle and just crack just enough to where water can drain out. You don't want like bugs or anything like that to get in there. Just enough to where it will trickle out fluid. The only problem that you got to keep an eye on is sometimes that meat will shift around and it could block that drain. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, I would check it every couple hours. Make sure it's in a cool spot. Don't have the ice chest. I don't care what kind of igloo, Yeti, whatever. Don't have it in direct sunlight. Try to put it in the shade outside or in the garage, somewhere where it's not going to be direct sunlight. But you got to drain that water off. Don't let it sit in stagnant, bloody water. You got to keep it drained off. You can do that for a couple of days and then process it, or you can even do that and then take it to a meat processor. The only thing with that is some meat processors will I don't have a policy where if it's quartered, they have to stop on the one deer and do that because they don't have ways to store that meat properly. So some of them get a little aggravated. A lot of them prefer you to bring the whole deer because they can hang it up and it gets dry aged in their cooler. But if you're gonna do it yourself, I wouldn't recommend doing the venison on ice more than 72 hours. I usually do, if I can do it, I do it 48 hours. But like I said, I do not recommend doing it over 72 hours. You got to maintain it. You got to stay on top of it with your ice. So plan accordingly if that's what you're gonna do. But hopefully this is good information for y'all. Like I said, I apologize for being long-winded, but I wanted to get this video out. Maybe it'll help somebody. But if you have different views on that or different processes, feel free. You can drop it into the comments. But if you do me a favor, don't really address it to me. Just address it to the group. Because like I said, I'm gonna do it the way I want to do it. And that's just I know it works. I've been doing it for a long time. So. But feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. It's basically how you do it. If y'all you don't understand, hopefully I understand, or people understand that. Is like I said, you don't address it to me. Just do me a favor, just drop it in the comments. It's kind of like a group chat, basically. Kind of bounce different ideas off, right? Like I said, I do it the way I've done it for past almost 25 years, and I've learned through trial and error, but I know what works, and yeah, I do what works. I apply common sense. So, but thank y'all for watching. And like I said, hopefully this video wasn't too bad, and hopefully y'all got some good information from it. So that's the theory behind it and the method. So, but y'all take care. And if you're deer hunters, good luck. If y'all have killed a big buck already, congratulations. And hopefully I'll see y'all again in the near future. Y'all take care.